That's all been incredibly important to me, and it's been a real sort of guiding example of just what sort of a good monarch can be. And it's been incredibly insightful for me growing up, watching her leadership in that role.
Something unprecedented happened on the morning of March 10th, 2026. And if you haven't heard about it yet, you need to sit down, because the British monarchy will never be the same again. Prince William, the Prince of Wales and heir to the British throne, did not ease into his future reign with cautious diplomacy and measured statements. No, he picked up the sword, and he used it. In a move that constitutional experts are already calling the most dramatic restructuring of the royal family in living memory, William officially and permanently stripped Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie of York of every remaining royal vestige they possessed. Titles, military patronages, official engagements, corporate partnerships, gone. All of it, in a single, cold, clinical decree delivered from Kensington Palace. This is not a slimmed-down monarchy. This is an amputation. But here's the question that everyone watching this needs to sit with for a moment. How did two princesses, women who grew up inside the walls of the most famous family in the world, end up here? How did they go from royal engagements and designer outfits at Royal Ascot to being stripped of their titles and placed under what amounts to domestic surveillance? The answer, as we are about to uncover, is not a single catastrophic mistake. It is a decade-long shadow trail, one that leads directly back to one of the most toxic names in modern history, Jeffrey Epstein. Stay with me, because this story gets darker before it gets clearer. The sins of the father. To understand what happened on March 10th, you first need to understand what has been building for years, quietly, beneath the polished surface of royal protocol and palace PR. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, now formally referred to in palace communications as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has been the Crown's most embarrassing liability for nearly a decade. His friendship with convicted offender Jeffrey Epstein, documented through photographs, flight logs, and a catastrophic BBC Newsnight interview in 2019, made him radioactive. He was stripped of his royal duties, his military titles, and his HRH status in January 2022. The public narrative at the time was controlled and carefully managed. The sins were Andrew's alone. His daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, were to be left in peace. They had nothing to do with it. They were collateral victims of their father's terrible judgment. That narrative has now been shattered. In February 2026, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was formally arrested, facing charges of misconduct in public office linked to his time as the UK's trade envoy. But as forensic auditors began pulling at the threads of that investigation, what they found was not a single isolated scandal. It was a web. A complex, deliberately constructed web of financial obfuscation, private communication, and shadow diplomacy. And the daughters were allegedly sitting right in the middle of it. Think about that for a moment. The palace had spent years trying to quarantine the Epstein damage inside the walls of Andrew's own disgrace. And all along, according to the intelligence now being laid bare, the quarantine was never complete. Ask yourself this. If you discovered that people close to you had maintained contact with a criminal network long after that network had been publicly exposed, what would you do? What would it take for you to act? For Prince William, the answer was March 10th, 2026. The Royal Accountability and Ethics Act 2026. The day before William's public decree, March 9th, 2026, a high-stakes emergency summit took place within the palace. Present were William himself and the formidable Princess Anne, the woman widely regarded as the iron backbone of the Windsor institution. From that summit came what is already being called the most significant piece of royal governance in generations, the Royal Accountability and Ethics Act 2026. This legislation, unprecedented in both its ambition and its surgical precision, introduced a mandatory ethics check for every member of the royal family. Not a suggestion, not a voluntary disclosure. A mandatory, independent, audited review of personal finances, offshore interests, and private communications networks. The Act also provides the legal mechanism for something that has never existed before in the modern monarchy: the formal expulsion of any member who refuses to cooperate or who fails the ethics check. No title, no patronage, no protection. Beatrice and Eugenie were asked to participate. Independent auditors were ready. The process was designed to be thorough but fair. They refused. They denied auditors access to their private financial ledgers and their offshore interests. And in doing so, they made William's decision extraordinarily simple. You do not refuse an ethics check unless you have something to hide. That was the message from the palace. And that refusal was the final nail in the coffin of the House of York. Here is the question this raises, and it is one worth taking seriously. In any institution, whether it is a corporation, a government body, or a royal family, at what point does loyalty to a family member become complicity in their wrongdoing? Where is the line between standing by someone you love and choosing to protect a corruption that is actively damaging everyone around you? Beatrice and Eugenie had years to draw that line. They chose not to. The allegations that shook the foundation. Now let us get into the specifics, because the details that emerged from the unsealing of palace documents and the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Crime Command investigation are deeply damaging. First, the communication network. Documents recently unsealed by U.S. authorities and corroborated by the Metropolitan Police suggest that both Beatrice and Eugenie maintained active, secret communication with individuals connected to Jeffrey Epstein's network, and they allegedly did so long after Epstein's death in 2019. This is not a past association being dug up for optics. This is an ongoing relationship that continued well into a period when the royal family was desperately trying to contain the Epstein fallout. Second, the gifts. Investigators have identified a series of high-value transfers, luxury jewelry, artwork, and financial payments that Beatrice allegedly received. These were not birthday presents from old friends. They are being characterized in the investigation as remuneration for discretion, payment, in other words, for keeping quiet. Third, and perhaps most explosive, the shadow diplomacy. During Beatrice's unofficial trade visits to countries including Vietnam and Singapore, she allegedly shared sensitive institutional intelligence with individuals connected to Epstein-linked shell companies. This was not an act of royal service. This was a commercial transaction, the exploitation of her proximity to the throne for financial gain. And fourth, the slush fund. Investigators believe that in 2022, both Beatrice and Eugenie utilized access to certain royal financial channels to divert millions of pounds toward their father's legal settlements. This clandestine fund was allegedly used to pay off accusers, including, in the most high-profile case, a settlement connected to Virginia Giuffre. By using royal resources to silence legal threats against their father, the York sisters are accused of essentially hijacking the crown's treasury to protect a predator. Let that sink in. Not merely standing by their father, not simply refusing to distance themselves from him, but allegedly using the institution's own money belonging to the crown, to cover for him. The question for every person watching this is, did you expect the rot went this deep? And perhaps more importantly, does it change how you feel about the monarchy's decision to act so decisively? William's decree. What was actually taken? At 9 a.m. on March 10, 2026, Prince William delivered his address from Kensington Palace, flanked by Princess Anne, the woman who has become the architect of what insiders are calling the Windsor firewall. He was composed, precise, and utterly final. The following actions were enacted immediately and permanently. Beatrice and Eugenie of York are stripped of all military patronages and representative duties. The use of the HRH style and the princess title is suspended indefinitely for all public engagements. Corporate partners, including BT and Barclays, have officially severed all ties with both sisters. Major universities holding honorary associations have followed suit. Their residences in Norfolk and Berkshire are now under permanent police perimeter from the Specialist Crime Command, not for their protection, but to ensure that no sensitive digital assets are removed from the premises. Investigators are particularly interested in a series of encrypted servers found at Beatrice's Berkshire estate, which are alleged to contain the trade envoy updates she shared with Epstein-linked contacts. In a remarkable further step, the welfare of the sisters' children, August, Sienna, and Wolfie, has become a matter of direct palace concern. Under the March 9th protocols, William mandated that any royal child with secondary proximity to a criminal investigation must be shielded from the media fallout. Princess Anne has coordinated a transition of the children's care to a neutral guardian framework. The children are being moved to a secure private wing of Sandringham, away from the imminent police searches of their parents' homes. William made one thing explicit above all others: this is not a temporary suspension. It is a permanent reassignment. The York branch has been pruned. They are no longer part of the conversation. They are part of the historical archive. One senior source close to William was quoted this morning with words that will echo through the institution for decades. "We are not a holding company for the disgruntled or the discreetly wealthy. We are a constitutional pillar. If you cannot stand in the light, you cannot represent the crown." The Portugal mirage and the marriage in tatters. For years, Princess Eugenie and her husband, Jack Brooksbank, cultivated a glamorous, sun-drenched image of international living, dividing their time between London and the exclusive Costa Terra Golf and Ocean Club in Portugal. It looked like the ideal modern royal life: fashionable, aspirational, entirely above suspicion. It was, according to Palace Intelligence and the Metropolitan Police, a strategic evasion of judicial oversight. The unsealing of what investigators are calling the Nightingale dossier on March 9th has painted a far more troubling picture. Forensic accountants working under Windsor firewall protocols have identified a web of offshore shell companies based in Lisbon and the Azores that reportedly served as financial relay points for the York family, specifically as suspected laundering channels for funds derived from the Epstein network used to sustain the sisters' high-fashion lifestyles after their official royal allowances were slashed following Andrew's 2019 disgrace. The toll of all of this on Eugenie's marriage is now impossible to ignore. At King Charles III's high-profile birthday celebration earlier this year, Eugenie appeared without Jack Brooksbank. His absence sent shockwaves through the press. Observers described her as brittle and visibly strained. Sources within the palace suggest that Jack has grown increasingly weary of being a collateral participant in the York family's legal battles. His own business reputation, cultivated carefully in high-end real estate and hospitality, is being dragged through the mud by his wife's refusal to create distance from her father. The choice facing him was stark: loyalty to the disgraced Duke of York or the preservation of his own family's future. Eugenie's repeated public choice to stand by Andrew, visiting him at Royal Lodge, supporting his legal defense, has reportedly made that decision for him. The Portugal life was a mirage. The marriage may be next, and the Crown has made its position clear. Eugenie's choices are her own, and the institution will not carry the consequences of them any longer. Across the Atlantic, the Sussex collapse. If the expulsion of Beatrice and Eugenie was a clinical amputation, what is happening simultaneously in Montecito, California, is the agonizing removal of a malignancy that has plagued the monarchy for nearly a decade. The palace has confirmed that the London Sanctuary Protocol, the legal framework established to reclaim Archie and Lilibet, has entered its terminal phase. Under the newly enacted Royal Accountability and Ethics Act 2026, William has issued a directive that strikes at the very heart of what the Sussex brand was built upon. The palace has formally communicated to the California courts that the titles Duke and Duchess of Sussex are no longer recognized as functional designations for any official state or international representation. Furthermore, the Crown has requested that the Santa Barbara Superior Court recognize the titles as de facto null, due to the couple's persistent violation of the duty of neutrality and their engagement in what the palace formally terms the commercial exploitation of sovereign proximity. Harry and Meghan built their entire post-royal identity on the idea that they could be part-time royals, retaining the status, the security arrangements, the titles, and the financial cachet of their lineage, while simultaneously monetizing those assets through Netflix deals, podcast contracts, and memoir publishing. William's response, backed by the full legal weight of the Privy Council, is the most definitive legal counter-argument imaginable. You cannot be a private citizen in California while trading on the intellectual property of the British Crown. Perhaps the most devastating legal development relates to the psychiatric evaluation Harry commissioned in support of his claim for intergenerational trauma. By testifying under oath to a level of psychological fragility that has become part of public record, Harry has inadvertently handed the palace's legal team a weapon. If the prince is suffering from the degree of psychological instability he himself described, then he is, under the relevant legal standards, incapable of providing the stable environment the king's grandchildren deserve. Harry used his own words to build a narrative of victimhood. The palace has used those same words to strip him of his last remaining claim to paternal authority. Meanwhile, their financial situation is in freefall. The Montecito estate foreclosure is nearing completion. Media contracts have evaporated. The couple is now reliant on a dwindling pool of bridge loan providers who are growing nervous about the legal implications of the Epstein stain reaching into the Sussex's own offshore financial web. Reports suggest that the very same shadow network Beatrice allegedly used for her trade envoy gifts has been identified in the Sussex's financial accounts, linking the two scandals in a way that suggests a broader systemic corruption that the Crown is now committed to eradicating entirely. The Sussex experiment, the attempt to modernize the monarchy from the outside while leveraging everything the inside offered, is over, not with a settlement, with the crushing, inevitable weight of institutional law. The children, the London Sanctuary Protocol. Amid the institutional warfare and the legal dismantling of the Sussex brand, the most human dimension of this story is this. Two young children, Archie and Lilibet, are at its center. Following the judicial decree that stripped the Sussexes of their primary custodial authority, the palace fast-tracked the London Sanctuary Protocol. As Princess Anne has described it, this is not a political maneuver. It is a humanitarian extraction from an environment that the California court has deemed dangerously volatile. The Royal Lodge, historically synonymous with the grandeur of the late Queen Mother, has been completely repurposed under the direct supervision of Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. Gone are the cold, formal trappings of a state residence. In their place, a facility designed deliberately to mimic the warmth of a traditional, stable family home. William has mandated a complete media blackout around the children's new quarters. No photographs, no leaks, no branding of their daily lives. The goal is simple and profound. They are to be children, not assets. One of the most quietly brilliant decisions in this process has been Catherine's insistence on retaining Elena Rodriguez, the children's long-term nanny, as an institutional consultant. By ensuring that the one-face Archie and Lilibet trust remains a constant presence, the palace has neutralized the fear of abandonment that so often accompanies legal separations of this kind. Elena has been granted a 3-year contract with a single, focused responsibility, easing the children's transition into the lives of their cousins George, Charlotte, and Louis. The goal is to build a peer group that can teach them how to carry the weight of royal identity without losing their humanity. The California court described the Sussex educational approach for the children as erratic and performative. In contrast, the children's new lives in the United Kingdom will follow the Prince George model: academic rigor, outdoor activity, and genuine private community interaction. No international business events, no social media exposure, no public endorsements, no cameras. William and Catherine have explicitly and deliberately rejected the celebrity upbringing. The children will attend independent schools with ironclad privacy policies and will be supported by a dedicated team of child psychologists focused on identity recovery, specifically helping them disentangle their sense of self from the toxic narratives constructed around words like spare, and from the constant media friction of their parents' public feuds. The palace is not hiding the truth from the children. Princess Anne's position was characteristically direct during her briefing. We are not erasing their history, but we are preventing that history from consuming their future. One day, Archie and Lilibet will ask why, and the palace will be ready with an answer that frames the state's duty to the next generation, not as an act of war against their parents, but as an act of protection for them. The Frontline 5. Who fills the void? As the House of York crumbles, Prince William has wasted no time executing a total architectural redesign of the royal firm. The void left by Beatrice and Eugenie is being filled, and it is being filled intentionally and visibly by what palace insiders are calling the Frontline 5. At the center is Catherine, Princess of Wales, Her return to full public duties, headlined by her upcoming appearance at Royal Ascot, is not simply a social calendar item. It is a masterclass in symbolic positioning. For months, while the York sisters were navigating shadow diplomacy and offshore shell companies, Catherine was the silent bedrock of the institution. Her reappearance as the public face of the monarchy is a direct, visual rebuttal to the chaos of the Yorks. She is professional. She is impeccable. She represents the new Windsor era. And above all, in the charged context of this moment, she is clean. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, has been given lead oversight of the patronages previously held by Beatrice and Eugenie. Known for her tireless, low-profile dedication to service, Sophie represents the perfect institutional antidote to the performative celebrity culture the York sisters were accused of fostering. Lady Louise Windsor has been fast-tracked into a formal representative role. Her poise, her commitment to her studies, and her complete absence of controversy make her the clean slate William needs. Proof to the British public that the younger generation of royals understands the meaning of duty over status. Queen Camilla anchors the cultural and literary pillars of the monarchy, providing the quiet gravitas of a senior royal who has survived her own storms. And young James, Earl of Wessex, is being actively mentored by Princess Anne to understand the full rigor of institutional responsibility. Every event on the royal calendar, from state banquets to regional tours, has been comprehensively audited to ensure that no York influence remains. This is not a temporary reshuffling of duties. It is a permanent realignment of institutional identity. The Purge of 2026, what it means for the monarchy. As the sun set on March 10, 2026, the world found itself witnessing something it had never seen before. A monarchy willing to consume itself to survive. For generations, the royal family operated under an unspoken principle: inherited loyalty. Titles acted as bulletproof vests against the consequences of private moral decay. You could be disgraced, embarrassing, even criminal, but as long as you carried the blood and the name, the institution would find a way to manage you, absorb you, tolerate you. That era died on March 9, 2026. By instituting the Royal Accountability and Ethics Act, William has sent a signal to every member of the extended royal family, and indeed to every monarchy watching from around the world, that bloodline is no longer a shield. The institution's survival depends not on protecting its own, but on being willing to amputate those who endanger it. The polling data from London is paradoxical, but illuminating. While individual royal family members have been publicly humiliated, the institution itself has seen a surge in support, particularly among younger demographics who have spent years demanding exactly this level of accountability in the face of injustice. The monarchy is no longer haunting the ghosts of its past. It is building something new on the rubble of what it had the courage to destroy. Princess Anne said it most clearly during her press briefing. The monarchy is not a family business in the way the public once understood it. It is a constitutional necessity that must be kept lean and clean to survive. The Epstein stain that once threatened to sink the institution has been scrubbed away with the surgical removal of the York branch. The Sussex drama has been concluded by the resecuring of the heirs. The British monarchy is moving forward, smaller, more focused, and more morally coherent than at any time in its modern history. Prince William has succeeded where many predicted he would fail. He has proven that the crown is stronger than the individuals who wear it. This is a defining moment in the 1,000-year history of the British monarchy, and it is not over. The children are still being settled, the investigations are still active, and the remaining questions about what the York sisters actually knew, about how deep the shadow network truly ran, and about what Harry and Meghan do next, remain unanswered. So we want to know what you think. Was William right to act so decisively, or did he go too far? Leave your answer in the comments, and if you believe that accountability should apply to everyone, regardless of their title or their bloodline, hit that like button, because this channel is going to be following every single development in this story as it unfolds. Subscribe so you don't miss a thing, and share this video with anyone who thought the royal family would never truly hold its own accountable, because March 10th, 2026 just proved them wrong. The new Windsor era has begun. and we are watching it happen in real time.